Good evening, everyone. I'm Dr. Karen Alexander from Texas Tech University, and I also serve as the director of the Curriculum Center for Family and Consumer Sciences. We are excited to have you with us this evening for our third webinar, which is Collaboration Tools and Resources in Learning Management Systems. This webinar is going to be presented by Dr. Cindy Miller, who is an assistant professor at Texas Tech University in the Family and Consumer Sciences Education Program.
Well, I also want to thank you for joining us this evening as well. I'm so excited to present to you some collaboration tools and resources in learning management systems. And so to get started, I want to let you know that our two webinar sponsors for this webinar is the Curriculum Center for Family and Consumer Sciences at Texas Tech, as well as our Family and Consumer Sciences Education Program. So we're excited to have them as sponsors. And if you know of family consumer science individuals who are interested in becoming family consumer science teachers, we would certainly love to visit with them and talk to them about that opportunity. So in my agenda today, what I'm hoping to do is talk to you about 4 different types of collaboration tools that we use in learning management systems, as well as one that I'll kind of touch on as well. And keep in mind, learning management systems are not just those types of systems that are paid type systems. There's also free ones. And so I'll talk about all of those there in just a moment. And mainly these 4 types of tools are used in all of these different types of systems. Best practices, I want to share with you some of those best practices in using these tools. I'm going to provide you some teaching ideas, as well as provide you resources for using these collaboration tools in LMS. So every now and then I'm gonna get out of this presentation and go into an actual LMS system that we use at Texas Tech, but it'll be similar to any of the LMS systems that we talk about as well, so that you would have an opportunity to see how to utilize that tool. But if you forget how to do that, there's resources I'm gonna connect you with so you can see a video of how to use that tool as well. Okay, so the first thing I want to do, utilizing your chat feature that you have that Dr. Alexander just brought up just a few minutes ago, I want you to tell me what LMS system LMS you're using on your campus. It can be any of these or others that I don't have mentioned here, but these are the ones that are more prominent that I've seen in most schools and most higher education institutions. So if you don't mind sharing that for me, that would be wonderful. And I'm not sure I can see that on my end over here. Oh, there it is. Okay. Now I can see it. All right. Oh, Google Classroom. Okay. Most are Google. Moodle. Good. Canvas. Okay. Schoology. Clever. Oh, that's a good one. Okay. Okay. So it looks like the majority of you are using Google Classroom. That's good. We're going to talk about that one, as well as Canvas, and Brightspace is another prominent one, or some call it D2L. Moodle is an open source type learning management system, but it's free for school districts to utilize. It does have a lot of technology side of it that your IT person has to have some background in. And then there's Schoology and Google Classroom that are also free, but also very easy for school districts to implement. For those of you that use PowerSchool, that's one of the reasons a lot of districts use Schoology, because it integrates with PowerSchool, which is a district management system. Okay, so moving on here, let's talk about the first collaboration tool, discussions. Okay, this is the one I see misused quite a bit in learning management systems. And so I want to talk about this one, spend a little more time on this one than the other ones, is because this discussion tool should provide for the ability for asynchronous discussion. That just means that not everybody's on the discussion at the same time. So you may have a student who's answering a discussion question at 12 midnight and another student answering a discussion question at 3 p.m. So that's what asynchronous means. Right now we're in a Zoom meeting, Zoom webinar, so we're synchronous. We're all here at the same time. So just kind of give you an idea of how that occurs. But students are hopefully are able to gather their thoughts when they see the discussion question and ideas before they post. And then hopefully they're posting thoughtful and reflective responses, which hopefully leads in more in-depth learning. So the key here is to make sure you're asking open-ended questions that are provoking the discussion, that's furthering that discussion, not closed-in questions such as yes or no questions, not questions related to facts they read, but more prodding them to think about beyond what they read in their assignments or what they did in that assignment, but to think about how does this impact me, or how does this impact what's happening in the community today? All of those types of things, and I'll talk about that more here in just a little bit in just a moment. But I wanted to let you know some of the benefits. It can build a community with peers and instructor. If you're utilizing really good discussion questions, I'll give you an example. In one of the courses I'm teaching online, I have 22 students. I had them do a particular discussion activity, and I've got 80 responses. And so that just tells you right there that they could really relate to that activity. Like, they've put in a lot of different perspectives related to that activity, which is really made other members in that, other students in that course go, oh, wow, I didn't even think about that. And so they're now having additional discussions. Yes, it takes a while to go through all of those, but it's really been very rewarding and very interesting, because they even come up with perspectives I didn't even think about as an instructor. So that great opportunities for you and the students to learn together. So hopefully it sharpens and practice. When they practice, it sharpens a number of skills, hopefully being able to articulate and defend their position, consider various points of views, and create a reflective response. But it also gives students a voice, especially those who are normally quiet in the classroom. We have some of those students in our regular classrooms who don't say much, and really you'll see quite a few of your shy students speak up right away because they feel safe. And we'll talk about how you can make them feel safe here in just a moment as well, but they feel safe in discussing some of the things that are being brought up during that discussion board. So it also empowers students to view and respond to their peers in a safe and respectful environment. So let's talk about what that means. One of the best practices that you need to implement in discussion is have some kind of netiquette or expectation policy. Actually, one of the resources I'll provide you is an infographic that has 15 rules, I should say, that students should implement when they're working in a discussion. And one of them is being respectful of others. Another one is not using all caps to shout at people, all of those kinds of things. And so you'll have that in just a little bit. I'll show you the link to that. So, but you need to provide some type of netiquette policy for all your discussion boards, so students know that you want them to be able to communicate safely, that their opinions will be respected, whether students agree with them or not, and clarify what's expected from your students. You want to make sure that you're not using a discussion tool just to be using a discussion tool. You want to use it so that it ties in your course learning objectives. So that may mean you don't have a discussion tool for every weekly lesson. You may just have it for certain lessons that you feel like really need to have that further discussion. So again, you want students to be able to achieve those learning objectives. So do you want students to demonstrate their knowledge of key concepts? So that's a question there you need to ask yourself before you decide to consider using a discussion tool. Have clear instructions and grading these discussion responses and so forth. And I'll provide a rubric for you so you can also utilize that in your discussions. Pose open-ended questions. I mentioned that a while ago, because you really want to encourage your students to think and explore, compare, discuss, all of those things that make their responses be something that they really can see that they're really prodding themselves to think of beyond not just what they learned, but how they could use that learning beyond the classroom, even in some situations. Set limits. It's very important for you to tell your students how long you want their discussions to be. Do you want it to be, I have mine between 200 words and 500 words, or you could say you want at least 2 paragraphs with 3 sentences in a paragraph. So be sure and set limits. Otherwise, you could get some students who will just answer that discussion question in 1 sentence. So it's very important that you're helping them understand that discussion is just like a face-to-face discussion. When you ask them a question in a classroom, you want more than just 1 sentence from them. You want them to really elaborate on what they're learning. And then please ensure instructor and presence. I can't emphasize that more. They need to see that you're in that discussion too, not just them. I mean, I'll go into the discussion forum and I'll look and see what's going on with what's happening in that discussion. But at the same time, if I see something's getting off track, I'm going to go in there and discuss and say, okay, we're going in a direction we don't need to be going. We need to come back and make sure we're focusing on what the question is asking. And then if I see discussions that are happening that are very thought-provoking, I'm going to go in and say, you know what, I have one more idea for you. Have you thought about this? And so they need to see your presence in those discussions, not just themselves. And there are times I've seen students in their discussion forum just taking off and doing great. And I may not say anything because I think they're way on track. So sometimes I'll send an announcement to them saying, students, you did an amazing job in your discussion post. I loved all the posts that you made. So I may do something like that that's really giving them a perspective that I watched their discussions and that I was very pleased with how well they were responding to each other. Some teaching ideas. Most people use discussions as an introduction activity for students to introduce themselves into the course, especially if they've never met each other face to face. And so I hope you'll allow students to respond, not just by a written response, but maybe use a video or a podcast or another online tool like VoiceThread, just different ways that they can come in and introduce themselves, because they love those opportunities. And you can do that very easily in a discussion tool. You could also have them add images to examples of certain topics you're discussing about. You can see in this particular one, an example of discussion of barriers to a healthy community. They could include photos from their particular community. So I really think that helps them. One of my students recently posted a Venn diagram. We were talking about leadership and a difference between leadership and management. And she posted a wonderful Venn diagram of the differences in leadership qualities and management qualities, and then similarities. And that was really helpful for a lot of students to try to connect the similarities there, but also see the differences in those two types of positions. And then you might want to include an external discussion and reflection. I mean, a lot of times we'll ask students from our classes to go home and discuss things with their parents or discuss something with a friend or whatever it may be, or a professional. They could come back then and post those responses based on what they learned in that external discussion. Here's an example where you can have students have a real-time discussion with someone in their life about whether to legalize drugs. I had a student whose parent was a DEA agent, and he had a lot of perspectives about that. And so he shared it with his daughter, and she came on and shared those perspectives, and it really opened up students' eyes to some other perspectives they'd never had thought about. So that's another way, again, to extend that discussion. Role playing, asking students to assume particular roles in a particular topic that you're discussing. So here, you could ask students to consider vaccinations from the roles assigned to them. I just put a few of them here, but you can have several of them, and sometimes I would have 2 or 3 students per role. So if I had a college student living on campus, I could have 3 students who assumed that role. It just depends on how many students you have in your course. And so it was interesting for them to respond related to that role. And then another one is a fishbowl. And we usually use this in our classrooms as a traditional discussion, but only half the class participates at a time in this part. So they're inside the fishbowl, so to speak. So the other half observe the ongoing discussion that's happening, and they're pausing to reflect on things that they're seeing in that discussion with the other half of the class. So for example, you could have half the class respond to a traditional discussion question, and then the other half, what I had them do is write a response, including what they learned, what was surprising that they learned, their most salient takeaway, one thing they learned about themselves, an area they might like to. So the other half of the class did that in that particular discussion forum. So that way they could see what they learned from other students that were posting responses to the discussion question. And then you could flip it for the next half of the semester or the next semester, whichever the case may be. So here's some discussion resources, and I've got links to them. You'll have access to this presentation, so don't worry about that. We'll give you access to it later on after the end of the webinar. But this is a great YouTube video. If you're not feeling comfortable about how to start a discussion prompt, this is a great video to view and learn how to do that. Also, I put in a Mastering Online Discussion Board Facilitator Guide. That's also an excellent resource. Here's the 15 Rules of Netiquette infographic I talked about just a moment ago. When you click on that, it'll take you to that infographic, and you can plop that in to your course, your discussion, so students will know what they're expected to do when they're in that discussion. Here's a sample discussion board rubric. There's also a book. I don't know if some of you are familiar with Stephen Brookfield, but he has a discussion book, 50 Great Ways to Get People Talking. It's a link to an Amazon site for that, and you can get it on your Kindle for 13 bucks. It's not expensive whatsoever. So think about using those types of resources. I'm going to go ahead and minimize this for just a moment and get into my course. I set up a kind of this is actually a course I have taught, that this is a kind of a development course that I wanted to kind of show you how to utilize these tools. You would actually, in Blackboard, this is the Blackboard LMS system, you would actually use a tool link right here. And then you would go in and say, oh, okay. And again, it depends on what your campus purchased for all your tools, but most of them purchase discussion. So that's usually, so you click on discussion board, and then you can give your discussion board any title you want to, you know, Dr. Miller's discussion forum, or what do you want, whatever you want to call it, or discussion board, whatever you want to call it. So here I have it down here in my.
Dr. Miller?
Yes.
You need to change the view on your sharing. We're still seeing the discussion resources.
Oh, okay. I apologize.
So pull up your share screen, and then you should be able to switch over to your internet view.
Oh, sorry about that.
There you go.
Okay, great. I apologize for that. So a while ago, I was talking about how you have a tool link up here at the top, and most LMS systems have some type of tool that you can access. And then here is where I chose discussion board down here, and then I could give it any name I wanted to up here at the top. So, but what I called it in this course was just called discussions right here. So when I click on that, it'll bring up the discussion forums that have been created. One of them is student introductions. So this is where the students would go in and they click on student introductions. And then once they click on that, they would click on create forum. And that's where they would introduce themselves. You're seeing it access denied because this is a course that's no longer available right now to students. So that's why you're seeing that access denied. But they would click on create forum, go in and talk about themselves. One of the things I did in the student introductions is also related a question to what they were going to be learning in the course. So this was a family policies course. So I asked students to tell me what family issue out there in today's society was a concern for them and why. And so that kind of got them getting into what they were going to be learning in the course. So that's something I would strongly encourage you when you do student introductions, is not just have them introduce themselves, but also ask a question that's related to the course. And then here's an Ask Dr. Alexander discussion forum, and I have one in mind too called Ask Dr. Miller. This is a really wonderful idea for you to think about, because I don't know about you, but when I introduced a new assignment, sometimes I would get 15 to 20 emails of questions about that assignment. So I asked students if they had any questions about the assignment or the course in general, to put it in this Ask Dr. Alexander discussion forum. And that way, when they ask that question, I could go in and answer it, and all the students would see my response. So that limited how many emails I was getting constantly asking me questions about the assignment or the course, and that way I could answer them right there where everybody could see them. So that's something you might want to consider as well when you're setting up a particular discussion forum. Okay, now I'm going to go back to my my other screen here. Okay, and get back to the oops, not that one. Sorry about that.
Okay, Dr. Miller, while you're on discussion boards, we do have a question that's relevant.
Okay.
And is there a free discussion board only platform that goes maybe even with Google Classroom?
Yes.
Okay, so if you want to go ahead and explain that. And I do know in Google Classroom, you can set up discussions for your students as well.
Yes. And actually, I have a link to a video where it shows you how to do that. I'll show you that later on at the end of the presentation. But you can do a pre-discussion board, and I'm assuming you're talking about pre-discussion and that you're thinking kind of getting a start-off activity or something on that side of it. I'm not sure what you're meaning by pre-discussion, but you can go in and set up all your discussion forums yourself.
Free,
Pardon me?
Free, free discussion board.
Oh, yes. The in Classroom and Google Classroom, there's a free discussion tool that you can utilize in there very easily. Also in Schoology, also in Canvas, all of them have discussion tools. That's one of the main collaboration tools that's in every LMS system. And then, and there's not a specific type of tool outside in another area. I mean, Flipgrid is one that I see teachers use a lot for a discussion tool if they don't have access to an LMS system. So that's it, and I'll give you link to resources on that and how to set that up. That's really a cool tool to set up a discussion topic. Outside Classroom Help and outside the LMS systems, Flipgrid is really a great tool to use. And that's one's free of charge. Microsoft made that free of charge. They did that a long time ago, actually, before this COVID-19 virus came along. Anything else?
In Google Classroom, are you talking about the comment box?
No.
No, there is a separate function.
Yes.
So.
Yes. Okay. So let's talk about another collaboration tool, which is a blog. And sometimes I get questions asked, what's the difference between a discussion board and a blog? Well, on the blog side, you have a lot more room to write as far as space on your screen. And a discussion board, you have quite a bit of room, but at the same time, you want that to be really something short and that allows students to, just like social media, allows them to ask additional questions, but not be so lengthy and getting a response back. So the blog is more of a collaborative tool that allows students to really reflect on what they're learning in the course and analyze the course related materials better. I use blogs for case studies. I use blogs for support and defend type things on controversial issues. So that way students can see everything, students can write a lot more. It allows me to see their writing skills a lot better in that blog than I would normally see in a discussion. And that's the one thing I have a problem with in discussion sometimes, is that students want to discuss like they're texting their students. So I have to go in there and remind them not to do that. And they do that with email as well. But anyway, the blog, it really encourages students to trust and builds a motivation for them. I use two different kinds of blogs, and I'll mention what that is here in just a moment. But I really want the kids to really intellectually discuss more when they're in a blog. I want them to provide students with additional things to think about. They can also, in a blog, can add additional links to things, other resources, all kinds of different things like that in a blog. So I'll show you some of the blogs I've done here in just a moment, but it emphasizes writing as a crucial component of critical thinking when they're doing a blog. It really galvanizes students to contemplate what they're learning, and then it highlights collaboration and peer review. So when you're looking at the blog, you have two elements. The entry, you can use text to enter to start a blog off. You can use images. I've used a YouTube video before and asked students to tell me about their perspective of what they saw in that YouTube video. So you can do lots of different things. The blog does have comments, so they can't actually write in your blog. They can only comment in the blog about the blog. So that's where they can post additional resources or ask questions or anything like that in their comments. So it really helps the students, and the blog entries are over to the right-hand side, and I'll show you that here in just a moment. So you can see all of the entries and click on any of the students' entries that they've entered in, asking, supporting the information that they're talking about in that blog. But then other students can go in and comment on other students' blog entries and make add some additional perspectives, or say, hey, have you looked at this resource? It's really good. So you've got 3 blog settings: a course blog, an individual blog, and a group blog. I use course blogs and group blogs. I don't use individual blogs that often, mainly because I think students can create their own individual blog outside of the LMS system if they want to do that. I use course blogs if I have a particular topic I want all students to contribute to, and then I use group blogs for students if I'm doing a group project, the students are doing a particular group project and so forth. So that's the purpose behind those two blog settings that I use. So again, some best practices: make sure you have specific guidelines for blogging and commenting. I've got a blog netiquette that you can use. Also have a rubric that you can also use to evaluate students' blogs. Blog assignments should encourage students to engage in all levels of thinking on Bloom's taxonomy, not just remembering and understanding, but also making sure they're applying, they're analyzing, they're evaluating, creating, all of those types of things. And then again, create clear instructions and grading so that students know what's expected of them when they do that blog. Some teaching ideas here: have students offer reflections about a reading or assignment. I usually do that more in the discussion than I do in a blog, but that is something I have seen in some blogs. Have students interpret a case study. That's what I do in my blogs. I have students analyze a topic and maybe add information over several weeks over the entire semester, so that the topic is growing. Like in our family policies class, we had a group of students who were doing eating disorders, and so there was lots of information adding about that particular issue over several weeks during the semester. You can have students deliver arguments and supporting evidence on a controversial issue. I've used blogs for that. And again, you can have students participate in conversational, respectful debate via the comments section. So again, they can't go in and edit the blog that you've put, that entry that the student puts in or that you put in as the instructor, but they can go in and add comments. And then have students engage in peer review of writing assignments. I usually do that in another type of collaboration tool rather than the blog, but it can be done in a blog as well. So here's some blog resources for blog netiquette, guidelines for online activities, sample blog rubric. Also, if you don't have a blog in your particular, and I've seen all the LMS systems, they do have a blog resource there, but you can go to EduBlogs. That's also free, and one that I see a lot of students already know how to utilize, actually. So a lot of them have their own individual blogs because of that. And so, but it is a free resource that can be utilized. So let me show you, get into my screen here again. There we go. And show you how that's utilized on this particular. Can everybody see, Dr. Alexander, okay. So down, again, you would use the tool link, whatever that may be in your particular LMS system, and you can, again, choose a particular tool such as blogs. So here's one right here, and then you can call it anything you'd like to call it. I just called mine blogs down here, and then it'll pop up here. These are some of the blogs I've done. So here's one that I'll get into: how much a family's changed in your lifetime. And so here's where I'm putting on a particular topic. And so here I'm asking them to ask questions. So they would click on create blog entry, and then they would respond to these questions. Their blog would show up over here to the right under this index over here, and then you would see their particular blog entry. Now I can click into their blog and see what they've typed in there. And down at the very bottom, you won't see it on mine because I started this blog here, so they're responding to my blog entry. But down at the bottom of their blog entry, you'll see a comment box, and that's where students can go in and make comments to other students' entries that they are, what they're discussing, and so forth. And so it really, again, allows students to really have some really robust conversations and really, provide some additional resources or ideas for other students to think about that they may not have thought about. I had students who did a blog on homelessness, and it was interesting to get all the different perspectives from students, especially some of those who were homeless, that many of the students in the course didn't even know they were homeless. So again, this is a great tool to lengthen their writing skills. This particular policy course is writing intensive, so I definitely want to help them develop those writing skills. And so I will talk to them about later on when I'm grading. When you're grading a blog, it does provide a grading tool where you can go in and grade that blog. And so let me go in real quickly here. And so when you can edit, this is where you would edit your particular blog. And so you can see I made it as a course blog. And the other ones I have as a course blog as well. It's showing individual because I just haven't, I don't see that much of a difference between individual and course. But anyway, you can see that everyone has blog availability. You can display when to show it. You can make it individual to all students or to the course. And again, I'm not seeing too much of a difference in that, to be honest with you. But I do not allow anonymous entries and comments. I want to see all students' comments. So I think it's very important to make sure that that every student, if they're commenting, the other students can see who's commenting. Again, you can make it monthly or weekly. You can allow users to edit and delete entries. I do allow my students to go in and change their blog entry if they feel like they need to reword some things a little bit better. But they can't go in and delete comments and everything. So, so once they make a comment, they're gonna, and then you can also add grade points. And again, add a rubric if you'd like to. If you don't have one, you can create a new one here and add it there. So you can grade the blog entry, each of the students' blog entries through that rubric. The rubric shows up right on the right, and there you are. You can do that also in Google Classroom as well, and I believe also in Schoology as well. Okay, are there any questions
Miller,
about that?
Dr. Miller, yes.
Okay.
I've clarified which LMS you're using. So can you, we have so many people who are using Google Classroom. So can you talk a little bit more about how you would use that blog in Google Classroom? Would that be just like the question, or would it be in the assignment? What would be the best function for them to use?
You would use the blog just like I showed you here in this particular LMS system. You would create a particular activity or assignment there in the blog, and then you would have students go in and put their entries in the blog, just like they would do in this LMS system here in Blackboard. It's not any different. And again, I have a resource at the end that shows you a video actually that shows you how to do that very easily, and how to set up that blog tool.
Thank you.
Anything else? Okay, are y'all seeing
right now? Go ahead.
Are you seeing my presentation again?
Yes.
Okay. All right. The other collaboration tool is a wiki. And so I hear some say, well, what's the difference between a blog and a wiki? Well, wiki, students can go in there and edit that wiki. Any student. I mean, whatever you set up your wiki, they can go in and add resources to it. They can go in and add questions on it. That's not something you can do in a blog. You can only do that in the comments part. But in a wiki, it's actually like a website almost. That's what Google Classroom does. You can use Google Sites as a wiki, or you can use Google Docs as a wiki. And so I've seen a lot of educators use Google Sites as their wiki because it's just like a web page. So that's the difference there, and that it really allows for real-time collaboration where students can add their thoughts and ideas. So for my policies class, for example, I had 4 different groups of students doing different family policy issues. And so they all created, I gave them a group wiki where they all went in there and added things to that particular, related to that particular issue, whether it was a resource they found, whether it was a question they wanted to ask the other group members, whatever it may be. But the other students in the other, in the course could go in and also add resources to that other group's wiki. So it wasn't just limited to just the 4 members in that group. Other students, if they saw things going on in that wiki, they go, oh, you know what? I know what they might want to be aware of. So they could go in and add some things in there too, or ask even additional questions that they would like for the group to help respond to. It really gave all of the groups a lot of different perspectives from all the students in the class, which is really very important for kids to not just be, it's great to work as a team, but sometimes it's also a good idea to get perspectives of other students from outside the team. So it helps students have reached that Bloom's higher order thinking skills, because the wiki is really about creating and evaluating. It supports many forms of media, including music. It increases student engagement because they're able to interact with the course content through each other's perspectives. So it's almost like collaborating on a Google Doc, where you have students doing several different things to that document. Same thing here is happening on the wiki. And it helps them develop their teamwork skills, allows them to even use the wiki as an alternative to a PowerPoint presentation. Again, the nice thing about wikis too is that it shows that if anybody makes a revision or adds something to the wiki, it date and time stamps it. So in case students do not want to look at that or consider that change or anything, then they can go back and use the previous version. So it does show all revisions, and it allows options to revert to former versions and everything. So if a group of students are working on a policy paper, which my students were doing, and that group was going in there and adding things to that policy paper, the other members of the team could look and see what they were adding, but they also could go back and say, no, that's not really relevant here. We need to go back and keep what we had previously. So that's a wonderful advantage for Wiki. So again, you may want to start off with the low stakes activity. So one of the things I did when I got my students started on their particular Wiki was to go in and put the title of the issue, and then put the question, why is this an issue, and then go in and add some resources, just something just really low stakes so they can get used to using that particular Wiki tool. Make sure you make that Wiki meaningful for students. You don't want them to do a Wiki, just be doing a Wiki. Again, that's true of all of these collaboration tools, but you want to make sure they're really doing an authentic end product when they're doing that particular Wiki, and that it's something that they can see that is really building, and it's generating some great ideas and all those types of things. You do want to have specific objectives for using the Wiki that builds upon the collaborative potential. In other words, you don't want one student doing all the work. And you can see that when you look at that Wiki, you'll see which students did revisions, and you can tell if all of them are contributing or if just one. So you may want to assign some roles to some students. And so there's where I have the second best practices, or the next best practice is have them. You can have some responsible for writing a first draft, other students for revising, other students for organizing, and so on. And then those roles could change from time to time. So work with students to develop a series of deadlines so you can keep the various stages of the project or whatever you're doing with that Wiki on track. Some teaching ideas I've seen, some have created, educators have asked some students create a study guide for the course, so that way they could see some of the things that they really want to focus on studying. The teacher could do that also as well. I had students in this policy class, because we were learning so many different types of terminology, set up a terminology Wiki, and so they would go in and put terminology that they felt like they really needed to remember and look back at periodically and so forth. So that helped quite a bit. You can use it as a resource repository for current articles. So if there's articles you find to help the students with their particular topic that they're doing, you could also create a resource repository so students could go in and say, oh, okay, I need to look at that resource. And again, I encourage students to add to those resources as well. Also, you can use it as peer review of student writing. So this is what I really use the Wiki. One of the things I used the Wiki for was to peer review other students' writing. So once they finished that particular policy paper, then I had the other students that were not members of that group go in and peer review students' writing and provide suggestions and comments. Also, you can use it to collect and collate data if they're doing a lab experiment. In groups of 4 or 5, you can use a Wiki to plan and develop class presentations. So that's what my students did. They used the Wiki to develop their particular policy presentation that they were going to present. Or you can have students create e-portfolios. I think it's great to do an e-portfolio and a Wiki, but I would actually have students do e-portfolios outside of the LMS system, mainly because if that course closes, they don't have access to that e-portfolio any longer. So I'll show you a couple resources that I directed some students to go to. So if they wanted to develop an e-portfolio, then they could be able to go outside and develop their own through another Wiki. If they did that, they just sent me the URL link so I could go look at their portfolio and grade it from there. So that's the only disadvantage I see of creating e-portfolios in a Wiki, is that once a course is closed, the students, it's not available to the students any longer. So there's not a way for them to go in there and grab that portfolio unless you take screenshots of it to send to them. And that's not going to be beneficial to them because they can't go in and change it and update it and that type of thing. So I do provide a sample Wiki rubric. These are the free Wiki resources that are out there. I think Dr. Alexander and I use PBWorks quite a bit, but there's also one called Edit Me. These are free. So students can go out there and develop their own e-portfolio using these wikis, and I encourage them to do that with either one that they wanted to use if they wanted to have access to that e-portfolio after the course. So what I wanted to go in and share that what I did over here in this particular policies course. Oops, keep forgetting to click on share. Okay, hopefully you can see my screen. Down here is wikis. Again, you can choose it up here as the tool link and then choose wikis, which shows down here at the bottom. Well, if you can keep your drop down long enough there, and then you make it available to users. And so that's what I did here. So here are my wikis right here. And so, so I did a culture clash wiki, and of course you won't see anything on this one because this was a development course, but I did a culture clash wiki where I asked students to compare and contrast. And so what they did is they came in, they created their wiki page, and they put United States versus India. I mean, it could be any country they chose, but what I wanted them to do is take their particular issue, their family policy issue, and compare it to how another country was dealing with that issue. So if it was child abuse or eating disorders or foster care, whatever it may be, they went to a particular country of their choice and they looked at how that particular country was dealing with that issue, and then they came back and provided that information along with resources in this area right here. And you can see they can go in and attach things. They can go in and type stuff in and highlight it and then give it a link. And so there's lots of ways that they could go in and add all these types of resources in here. They could go in and add a YouTube video, whatever they wanted to do to kind of show the differences between how the United States handles that issue and how this country handles it, and as well as similarities and so forth. So that's another way of using a wiki page. I could have done that also with the blog site as well. And then another one, I did have them do their particular presentation on this one. I also had them use the family impact lens on a family issue topic on this one. I'm not sure if it's all in here. And again, it says follow the directions given in module 11. So I have weekly modules that they go into, and then they would come in and put the information here on this wiki. The nice thing is once they create that wiki page, over to the right, there's a list of different wiki pages related to that particular assignment. And so other students can look at other students' wiki pages and go in and add resources or whatever they would like to do. So that's the difference with a wiki page, is that students can go right onto their classmates' wiki page and add other resources and all those types of things. So it makes it really nice on that side of it for them to get lots of input from other students, input from me as their instructor, and that type of thing. And you can do wiki pages, like I said, in Google Classroom through either Google Sites or Google Docs. And I do have videos on that also to help you with that. I also wanted to show you that I also attached another Netiquette guide for you that's more general for online courses in general. So talks a little bit about security, telling students not to share their password with anyone, always log out, but also just some general guidelines when they're communicating online, as well as email netiquette. Again, we have students who try to text you when they're emailing you and not using proper. So I remind students to be professional in their emails, just like they would if they were being professional responding to an employer or to someone they're interviewing with and so forth. So I wanted to let you know that's available to you as well. Okay, I'm going to go in and go back to my presentation here. And say there's one other collaboration tool. This is a journal. Now this is not in every LMS system. This is in Blackboard, this is in Canvas, this is in Brightspace, this is in Moodle. It is not available in Google Classroom nor in Schoology, but you can, I can tell you that you're probably already doing this in a way if you're having students keep an online journal. It's a tool that should be used for a personal space for students to communicate privately with you, with no one else, just like if they were in a classroom and keeping a notebook journal. It's also intended to be a space for students to make connections amongst the very elements of the course. So it really helps students, hopefully help them focus on the positive experiences and use them to overcome difficulties in the course. If you have them do a weekly journal, then that should be an opportunity for them to comment on what they're learning in the course, but also maybe what they're struggling with. It really helps them find their voices, and I think it also empowers them to become more vocal with their opinions and thoughts. I had a student who was offended by a comment a student made in a discussion response. And so she asked me more information. I said, well, let me tell you where the student is coming from. And so that made her feel a lot better about why the student commented that way, because again, with any type of communication, students can be offended and you don't even realize you're offending them. And so you want to make sure that you have this type of journal for students to be able to respond to what they're learning. I read through their journal entries, and this is also a time for me when I'm looking at their journal entries to help them with their writing skills. So if they're having a lot of fractured sentences, incomplete sentences, run-on sentences, or they're just not using the right word. I saw one student who had 3 words of the word that in one sentence, and so just helping them understand why that's not needed and that type of thing really helped them improve their writing skills. And I did that through their journal, so that way they weren't offended by other students seeing what I was writing to them. Again, you want to learn more about your students, and that journal really helps you understand where they're coming from, their feelings, their opinions. It helps you as a teacher to build really meaningful relationships with them. I have discovered at the higher education level that my master's students, graduate students, don't like the journal as much as my undergraduate students. I don't know if that's a generation gap type of thing, but I have noticed I don't use journals as much on my graduate side. Journals also enable teachers to identify students who may be suffering from bullying, abuse, those kinds of types of things too. So once the student feels comfortable with you talking to you in that journal, it really starts to open them up to other things that they want to discuss as well. I think that some of the best practices here is at least 50% of the time, make sure you relate your journal topics to the content being covered, and make sure you start your topics with, what do you think? What would you do? What is your opinion? That kind of thing. So that way you're allowing them to really assimilate that content and relate to real world situations, which hopefully will make that learning relevant for them. Model the journal writing for students. So make sure you let them know what's expected of them, how the quality, the content, the length. Encourage them to extend, debate, defend, elaborate, all of those. Make sure you set clear expectations for them. And then also be sure to establish a level of respect. So make it clear that it's a private conversation that's not going to be shared with other students unless the students want to share that, and so forth. And then some teaching ideas. Some teachers use it as a class startup activity. Some journals can be used as a self-reflective tool. That's what I used it for. You can create journal assignments that are broad and student directed. Again, like an exit ticket that you would normally use in a classroom. And then journals are really ideal also for individual projects. If you have them do a research writing assignment, you can help with them with their writing skills privately. And then journals can also be used to record observations on a lab experiment. So I did put some rubrics here for journaling. Also, there's some outside sources that are very easy to use, Penzu, Evernote. I told students if they decided to use outside resources, that's fine. Just give me a link so I can make sure they're journaling and journaling on the areas that I'm asking them to discuss, to reflect.
Dr. Miller, how would you do this in Google Classroom? Would you do it as a Google Doc shared between you and the student, or would you link to one of these outside resources, or possibly both?
You can actually, in Google Doc, you can actually create folders for students in Google Doc and then allow that the documents you put in those folders to be private. And so that way only you and the student have access. So I'd use Google Docs as the journal. But if students feel uncomfortable with that, then yes, I would use the outside resources for them to do their journaling outside. But that's the disadvantage in Google Classroom and in Schoology. There's not a journal tool in there where you can make that specifically private, but I have created folders for students in my course in the Google Classroom side, and then made them private for the journal side. We created a journal folder within that folder so that would be private and nobody else could get into that and see it. So on this part here, here's a course reflection. And again, that Blackboard does have a journal tool. So I did a course reflection journal, which means that I wanted them to let me know privately what they liked about the course, what they didn't like about the course, what I could improve on in the course. I like this a whole lot better than the student course evaluation system that they have to utilize to evaluate our courses at the higher education level. And so I really wanted more substance than what I get from the course evaluation system. So, but I wanted to keep it private because I wanted students not to look at what other students were saying about the course. I really wanted their own thoughts, not looking at other students' thoughts but mainly just their private thoughts. But you could also create a reflection journal just for a particular student. And so here's Jane Smith's reflection journal. So Jane Smith would know she could go in there and access that journal and write and put entries in that I've asked her to put in there. And I could do that for every student in this particular course and so forth. But only those students would see that information and myself as the instructor. Okay. Now, in most LMS systems, there's another collaboration tool where you can have students go in and video, share with each other through, like in Blackboard, there's one called Adobe Collaborate. So you could set up a session where students could could get in that session, discuss things just like what we're doing in Zoom and so forth. So that's somewhat of a collaboration tool. But I've discovered most of my students like to use Skype or Zoom rather than Adobe Collaborate. But that is a possibility. I also wanted to let you know, and I apologize, boy, I'm running out of time here. I wanted to let you know in the Blackboard course, you've got a tool down here called Users and Groups. And so if you choose a groups down here, then you can create those groups and you can actually add blogs, wikis, discussion board, email, file exchanges, all that type of thing within that group. So that those students in that group would only have access to that blog, to that wiki, to that discussion, to the file exchanges, you can even add an email exchange in there where they only email with each other within that group. So they're not emailing where other students can see what they're talking about and so forth. So I just wanted to kind of let you know that that's also a possibility to do group blogs and to do group discussions and that type of thing.
Okay, we have about 5 minutes, Dr. Miller. And don't forget, in Google Classroom, you can assign activities to groups of students. I do a lot of that, where I select the students who are in a group. Maybe it's a base group that they've been working with or a team. And so you do that. And when you make the assignment, then you select who it goes to. If you don't want it to go to everyone, then you select who you want to go to in a small group. Then you make a new assignment and then send it to that next group, and you can duplicate your assignments very quickly. So just copy the assignment and then make it available to a next group of students.
And so here's the resources for all the collaboration tools I talked about. They're Blackboard Help, the Canvas Help, all of them, Classroom Help. I know Dr. Alexander and Ms. Storms talked about this resource already, but they all have videos there that you can look at. And there's the Netiquette guide I showed you all ago. Here's a wealth of Flipgrid resources if you want to use that as a discussion tool. Here's all the classroom YouTube videos I was talking about in creating a wiki, a blog, a discussion board, also with Schoology as well. So here are our next upcoming webinars coming up in next week on Tuesday and Wednesday. Tips for making quality videos with Mara Driscoll, and then Live Binders for active learning with Jency Huey. And then also, if there are other webinar topics that you would like for us to present on, just either use the URL or the QR code and answer 2 questions, and we'll also look at providing some additional topics for your interest. So are there any other questions?
Okay, we have a couple of folks wanting to know about this webinar, resources, and so forth. I've been posting throughout the chat where they are and will continue to be located. If you registered for the webinars in advance, and so for instance tonight you were in attendance and the only way for you to get the link for the meeting was for us to have you registered ahead of time, you will be getting a link to the webinar video once it is processed, and Dr. Miller's PowerPoint presentation. It will be in a PDF format, but all of the links that she has provided will be embedded, so you'll be able to click on those links and it will take you to those YouTube videos and so forth. If you missed a webinar, we will be posting those on the Curriculum Center website. Let me actually get to that page, share my screen real quickly, and I'll show you where those are located. So let me just go to the Curriculum Center homepage. So if you go to our homepage, which is the easiest is just ccfcs.org. That is the Curriculum Center for Family and Consumer Sciences, ccfcs.org. In our banner that you will see that runs through, you'll notice we have some online curriculum, including sample courses that you can access for free. We also have free trial of a financial literacy course, which is dollars and cents that you can gain access to for 30 days. And then we have other free teacher resources. So if you click on free teacher resources, it will take you to this page. And that's where you're going to find information about the three things that I just mentioned. Here are some of the resources that we have, the dollars and cents, the sample courses. We do have special pricing on our curriculum. We do provide 36 courses of curriculum that's teacher driven, and there is a reduced price for a year's membership, what's listed here, but if you only need a short-term membership, we are giving you a special deal of only $50 per course. It's normally $200 per course for an entire year, so it is quite a cost savings. Some of your districts still have leftover funds, especially Perkins money, so if this is something you're interested in, you may want to contact them directly, your CTE coordinator, and find out if there would be some money available for you to purchase. So in terms of the webinars, this is the webinar we had last night, and we will be posting the video as soon as it is available, as well as Dr. Miller's. We will have both of these posted here on this page at the very bottom by the end of this week. You can actually watch the video from last week, which was on Google Classroom Basics, here with the link to the video. It is a YouTube video, and you can also access my PowerPoint presentation for that video, and so you've got both of those there. They are free, they will remain free, and so feel free to access them at any time or share them with others that you think may be interested. As Dr. Miller mentioned, we do have 2 additional webinars coming up, Tuesday and Wednesday of next week. So Tuesday will be that quality instructional videos, and then we will have live binders for active learning. And both of those I think are going to be very beneficial for you. Again, you know, we're here to help you as much as we can. Let us know what else might be beneficial for you, and if you have additional resources to share, let us know. We are so glad to have you join us. Dr. Miller, thank you for a fabulous webinar. Very, very informative. I learned quite a bit and some things that I need to get on in Blackboard this year. So thank you for that, for that motivation. And we appreciate you all. Please stay safe and healthy, and let us know if there's anything else that we can do for you. Have a good evening.